far beyond the borders of human-controlled space, where stars burned brighter and stranger colors shimmered between nebulae. The Aurelian Empire stood as one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Their people were known for grace, intelligence, and near-perfect control over emotion. To many species, they were legends. To others, they were rulers who had grown distant from the struggles of ordinary life. Queen Lyrene ruled this empire with calm strength. She was respected, feared, and admired all at once. Her presence alone could silence a council chamber. Tall and luminous, with faint glowing patterns across her skin that changed with her mood, she carried the weight of countless worlds on her shoulders. Every decision she made affected billions, yet despite her power, she felt alone. The Empire trusted logic above all else. Emotions were carefully measured. Bonds were strategic rather than personal. Even loyalty often felt like duty instead of affection. Lyrene had accepted this as necessary. A queen could not afford weakness. Humans, however, were different. Humanity had only recently entered the wider galactic stage, and many ancient civilizations regarded them with suspicion. Humans fought fiercely, survived against impossible odds, and showed emotional reactions that older species considered chaotic. They were unpredictable, stubborn, and strangely compassionate. Lyrene had studied them carefully. Reports described humans risking their lives for strangers, forming deep bonds quickly, and refusing to surrender even when defeat was certain. To her advisors, this made them dangerous. To her, it made them fascinating. Her diplomatic mission near the border of contested space was meant to observe human activity from a distance, nothing more. The flagship moved through silent darkness, escorted by advanced vessels that could challenge entire fleets. No one expected an ambush. It began with silence. Sensors flickered. Communications cut off. Then space itself seemed to tear open as enemy ships emerged from hidden cloaking fields. Energy weapons struck with terrifying precision, targeting engines and communication arrays first. The attackers were from a rival coalition that feared the Aurelian Empire growing too powerful. Chaos filled the command deck. Lyrene stood calmly while officers shouted updates. Explosions echoed through the ship's structure. She gave orders with precise clarity, directing shields and evacuations while calculating survival probabilities in her mind. Despite their advanced technology, the ambush had been carefully planned. One by one, escort ships fell or retreated. The flagship suffered critical damage. "Your Majesty, you must evacuate," her chief advisor insisted. She hesitated for only a moment. A queen did not abandon her ship lightly, but survival meant preserving leadership. Finally, she nodded. The escape pod launched into darkness just as another blast tore through the flagship. The sudden silence inside the pod felt unreal after the chaos. Lyrene activated emergency systems, but her injuries were worse than she realized. Energy burns spread across her side, disrupting her biological patterns. The glowing lines on her skin dimmed dangerously. The pod fell toward a nearby planet. Gravity pulled her down faster than expected. Atmospheric friction shook the craft violently. Warning lights flashed as control systems failed. She tried to stabilize the descent, but consciousness slipped away. The last thing she saw was blue sky. Far below, on a quiet frontier world, Daniel Hale guided his transport vehicle across wide open land. The planet was mostly wilderness, rolling plains, scattered forests, and distant mountains that touched the horizon. Humans had settled here only recently, creating small communities far apart from one another. Daniel had once been a rescue pilot in deep space. Now he lived alone, repairing equipment and helping travelers when he could. Some people thought he was running from something. Others believed he simply preferred quiet. He liked the silence. That silence broke when his scanner detected a strange energy signature falling from orbit. At first he thought it was debris, but the readings were too organized. Something controlled, something alive. He followed the signal until he reached a scorched impact site where smoke rose from shattered earth. Metal fragments lay scattered like broken glass. At the center was a cracked escape pod, its design unlike anything human-made. Daniel approached slowly, cautious but curious. The hatch was partially open. Inside lay a figure unlike any he had seen before. She was tall even while lying down, her skin pale with faint glowing patterns that flickered weakly. Her breathing was shallow. The air around her shimmered with unfamiliar energy. Daniel hesitated for only a second before acting. Whoever she was dying. He lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she felt despite her size. Her skin felt warm but fragile, as if the glow itself held her together. He carried her to his vehicle and rushed back toward his shelter. The journey felt longer than usual. He monitored her breathing constantly, speaking softly even though he wasn't sure she could hear him. "You're gonna be okay," he said quietly. "Just hang in there." Inside his shelter, he worked quickly. He used medical equipment designed for humans, adapting settings carefully while scanning her biology. Her physiology was complex but showed similarities to known alien species. Improvisation became necessary. Hours passed. Finally, her breathing stabilized. Daniel leaned back, exhausted but relieved. When Lyrene woke, she expected pain and captivity. Instead, she saw a simple room filled with natural light. A human sat nearby, watching calmly. She tried to move but felt weak. "You're safe," he said gently, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Humans were not supposed to be this calm around powerful aliens. She studied him carefully, average height, worn clothing, tired eyes that still held warmth. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice faint. "Frontier Colony World," he replied. "Name S. Daniel." She said nothing for a long moment, processing. He had saved her. Why? Over the following days, she watched him closely. He asked few questions. He provided food, adjusted medical equipment, and allowed her space when she needed silence. There was no fear in him, no attempt to control her, only quiet care. She found herself curious. Outside, the sky stretched endlessly, filled with stars she had once commanded fleets beneath. Here, she was simply a wounded traveler dependent on a human stranger. Unknown to them both, enemy scouts tracked faint signals from the crash site. And they were getting closer. The next morning came slow and pale, like the sun itself was still half asleep. Wind moved through the tall grass outside Daniel's shelter, brushing the walls with a soft rustle. Inside, the air smelled faintly of metal, clean water, and warm food. Lyrene sat upright for the first time without fainting. The effort still made her chest tighten, and the glowing lines on her skin flickered when she pushed too hard, but she was alive. That alone was strange. By Aurelian standards, she should have died during the crash. Her body had lost too much energy, and her internal balance had been disrupted. Yet the human's tools, simple, rough, and clearly not designed for her species, had helped stabilize her. She did not understand how. She only knew he had refused to let her fade away. Daniel moved around the small room quietly. He did not treat her like a trophy or a threat. He treated her like a patient. Every time he checked her condition, his movements stayed careful, like he was trying not to scare a wild animal. Lyrene noticed that effort. It was not strategy, it was respect. He set a small container on the table near her. The smell was unfamiliar but not unpleasant. "It's broth," he said. "Mostly water, some salt, some protein. I don't know what your body can handle, so I kept it simple." Lyrene studied the container. On her ship, food had been measured by specialists and adjusted by medical officers. Here, a single human guest then offered it with honest uncertainty. She lifted the container and took a cautious sip. Warmth spread through her throat. Her body reacted, then settled. No pain, no shock, it was safe. Daniel let out a breath as if he had been holding it. "Good," he said. "I was worried I'd mess it up." "You risk much," Lyrene said, her voice still soft. "For a stranger," Daniel shrugged. It didn't feel like a risk. It felt like the only thing to do. That answer stayed in her mind long after he turned away. For the next 2 days, she rested and watched. Daniel's life was simple but not easy. He repaired equipment, checked power lines, cleaned filters, and tended to the small patch of crops behind the shelter. He also kept a radio receiver running, scanning local frequencies for weather updates and colony announcements. He spoke to her in short, calm sentences. He asked her name once. When she did not answer, he did not push. He simply nodded and kept treating her injuries. Lyrene had expected curiosity. Humans were known for it. She had expected fear because she was clearly not human. She had expected demands because power often attracted greed. Instead, she got patience. On the 3rd day, she finally asked, "Why do you live here alone?" Daniel paused as he tightened a strap on a portable medical unit. He did not look angry or defensive. He only looked thoughtful. "Because it's quiet," he said. "Because out here people need help sometimes and there aren't many who can do it." "That is not an answer," Lyrene said. Daniel gave a small smile. "It's the answer I'm ready to give." Lyrene could have pressed, but she did not. She understood guarded truths. A ruler lived with them every day. Later, when Daniel left to check a power relay outside, Lyrene tried to stand and walk. Her legs shook. She gripped the wall and moved one careful step at a time. Each movement made her skin patterns flare, then dim. Her body was still rebuilding energy. She reached the doorway and looked out. The land stretched wide and open. There was no palace here, no guard line, no fleet above, only sky, grass, and distant mountains. The simplicity felt almost painful, like stepping into an empty room after living in constant noise. She was not used to being small. Her thoughts turned to her people. They would be searching. They would be fighting. They might even believe she was dead. Her breathing quickened. Panic tried to rise, but she controlled it the way she always had, by forcing logic into the space fear wanted to fill. She did not have information. She did not have power. Panic would not change that. A sound in the distance pulled her attention. A faint hum, like a machine moving far away. She narrowed her eyes, scanning the horizon. The sound faded again, and the wind returned. When Daniel came back, he found her standing at the doorway. "You shouldn't be up," he said. "I heard something," Lyrene replied. "A machine." Daniel's expression shifted. He stepped outside and listened. After a moment, he nodded slowly. "I heard it too, thought it was just the wind." It was not. He did not argue. He simply walked toward his vehicle and opened a storage compartment, checking the contents inside. Lyrene saw tools, spare parts, and a compact device that looked like a weapon. He noticed her watching and spoke calmly. "Frontier rule. If you hear something you don't recognize, you take it seriously." Lyrene studied the weapon. "You expect danger." "Out here," Daniel said, "danger expects you." That night, Daniel increased the shelter's external sensors. The devices were basic, meant to detect animals or storms, but he adjusted them carefully, creating a wider range. Lyrene watched, fascinated by how fast he adapted. He did not need perfect tools. He made do, turned simple machines into something better. It reminded her of the stories she had read about humans in war, how they repaired ships with scrap metal, how they survived with almost nothing. Still, she needed certainty. She needed to know who was hunting her. On the fourth day, she decided to speak. Daniel was cleaning a piece of equipment when she said, "Daniel Hale." He looked up. "Yeah, you deserve to know who you saved." Daniel set the tool down slowly. His face stayed calm, but his eyes sharpened. Lyrene drew a careful breath. "My name is Lyrene. I am the Queen of the Aurelian Empire." The words fell into the room like a weight. Daniel stared at her for a moment, then he blinked once and nodded. "Okay," he said. Lyrene's skin patterns flickered with surprise. "That is all you say?" Daniel leaned back slightly. "What do you want me to say? Bow, panic, ask for money. I don't even know your empire, I just know you're hurt." Lyrene felt something twist in her chest, not pain, not fear, but a strange kind of relief. "You are not afraid," she said quietly. Daniel shrugged again. "I'm cautious, I'm not stupid, but fear doesn't help you heal." Lyrene watched him carefully. "If others learn who I am, they will come." "Sounds like they already are," Daniel replied. He stood and walked to the window, scanning the darkness outside. "You think that machine sound was scouts?" he asked. "Yes," Lyrene said. "The ones who attacked my ship may be searching for me. If they find me, they will not stop at my death. They will destroy anyone who helped me." Daniel's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained steady. "Then we don't let them find you." Lyrene studied him. "You speak as if you can decide that." Daniel turned back to her. His eyes were tired, but there was something firm in them. "Humans decide a lot of things we're not supposed to decide," he said. "It's kind of our problem." Lyrene did not fully understand the humor, but she understood the meaning. That evening, she tried to help him plan. She described the enemy faction, how their technology worked, how their scouts behaved, how they tracked signals. Daniel listened carefully, asking simple questions with sharp logic behind them. "How far can their scanners reach?" he asked. "It depends on the environment," Lyrene answered. "But if they pick up residual energy from my pod, they can trace it." Daniel nodded. "Then we need to clean the crash site." Lyrene's skin lines shifted. "That is dangerous." "Yeah," Daniel said, "but if we don't, they'll follow it right here." The next morning, he loaded supplies into his vehicle. Lyrene insisted on coming. Daniel wanted to refuse, but she argued with calm firmness. "I will not be sheltered while you risk yourself," she said. "I am not a helpless creature." Daniel looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Fine, but you follow my rules. If I say duck, you duck." Lyrene lifted her chin. "Agreed." They traveled across the plains toward the crash site. The land looked peaceful, but Daniel's posture stayed alert. His hands remained near the control panel. Every few minutes he checked the scanner. Lyrene watched him. She had traveled with elite guards who carried advanced weapons, yet none of them looked as focused as this lone human with basic tools. When they reached the crash area, the metal wreckage still lay scattered. Daniel stopped at a distance and studied the ground. Tracks, he said quietly. Lyrene looked closer. She saw marks in the dirt, small, precise impressions, not from animals, machines, scouts. They were here, she whispered. Daniel's eyes moved across the area. Not long ago. Lyrene's heart tightened. If the scouts had reached this site, they were close. Daniel stepped out and moved fast. He grabbed pieces of the escape pod, collecting anything with power or signal capacity. He smashed small components with a heavy tool, scattering the parts further so they could not be reassembled. Lyrene helped where she could, though her strength was still limited. She focused on disabling the beacon core, carefully pulling it apart and draining the last energy from it. As she worked, she felt a strange bitterness. This was the technology of her empire, built by the finest minds, and yet it had become a trail for enemies. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow. Anything else we can do? Lyrene scanned the site with her senses. There is residue in the air. Aurelian energy patterns linger. Daniel looked at the ground. Can you mask it? Not completely, Lyrene admitted, but I can reduce it. She placed a hand over a scorched section of metal and focused. Her skin patterns brightened as she pulled energy inward, collecting the remaining signature. The process drained her. Her vision blurred, but she forced herself to finish. When she stepped back, she swayed. Daniel caught her before she fell. Hey, he said, steadying her, you're doing too much. Lyrene tried to pull away, but her body would not cooperate. It had to be done. Daniel's grip remained gentle but firm. I get that, but you're not useful if you drop dead. Lyrene's patterns dimmed with a mix of frustration and, oddly, gratitude. She was not used to someone speaking to her this way. No one told a queen she was being reckless. No one dared. Yet Daniel did. They returned toward the shelter, but Daniel did not relax. His scanner beeped softly at intervals, and each time his gaze hardened. Halfway home, the machine hum returned, louder now. Daniel slowed the vehicle and looked toward a rocky ridge ahead. Lyrene followed his gaze. A small object moved along the ridgeline, a metallic drone shaped like a sleek insect scanning the land below. Her breath caught. Scout! Daniel's hands tightened on the controls. How many? Lyrene focused, trying to sense energy signatures. At least one. Possibly more hidden. Daniel's voice dropped. Can it see us? Not yet, Lyrene whispered, but it is searching. Daniel did not panic. He simply changed direction, steering the vehicle toward a shallow canyon where rock walls could block scanning. They moved fast. The drone shifted in the sky, adjusting its path. It noticed movement, Lyrene said. Daniel didn't answer. He guided the vehicle into the canyon and stopped under an overhang. He shut down the engine, cutting heat output. Silence fell, sharp and tense. Lyrene listened. The drone's hum grew fainter, then stronger again, circling. Daniel reached into a compartment and pulled out a small device, an old signal jammer he had built from spare parts. This might confuse it, he murmured. He activated it. A low pulse filled the air, almost too soft to hear. For a moment, the drone's hum stuttered like it was losing direction. Lyrene felt a flicker of hope. Then the hum steadied again, stronger. It adapted, Lyrene said, voice tight. Their technology learns. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Then we teach it the wrong lesson. He grabbed a flare-like capsule and tossed it out of the canyon, far across the open land. It burst with bright heat and energy. The drone reacted instantly, racing toward the false signal. Daniel exhaled slowly. Come on, he whispered like he was talking to a stubborn animal. Take the bait. The drone followed. Its hum faded quickly until there was only wind again. Lyrene stared at Daniel. That was clever. Daniel shrugged, but his face showed strain. It was desperate. They waited a few minutes, then started moving again, returning home through longer routes. Daniel did not take the straight path anymore. He moved like someone who expected to be hunted. By the time they reached the shelter, the sky had turned orange with late afternoon light. Daniel secured the doors and checked the sensors again. Lyrene sat quietly, her mind racing. If one scout had come this close, others would follow, and a scout never traveled without a purpose. It marked targets. It reported back. Daniel brought her water and sat across from her. We need a bigger plan, he said. Lyrene met his gaze. My fleet may be searching, but communication across this region is difficult. Daniel tapped the table. You have any way to call them? Lyrene hesitated. I have a personal beacon implant. It is encrypted. Only Imperial Command can recognize it. Daniel's eyes sharpened. Then use it. Lyrene's patterns flickered with inner conflict. If I activate it, the enemy may detect the signal. Daniel nodded. If you don't activate it, they'll find us anyway. At least this way your people might reach you first. Lyrene stared at her hands. In her empire, every move was calculated. But this wasn't a council chamber. This was a small shelter on a human frontier world with danger closing in. Daniel leaned forward slightly. I'm not telling you what to do, Lyra, but I'm in this now. If we're gonna survive, we need help. No one had ever said we to her like that, not as a political phrase, as a truth. Lyrene slowly nodded. Then I will activate it briefly, a pulse, not a continuous signal. Daniel stood. Do it. Lyrene closed her eyes and focused inward. The implant beneath her skin warmed. She gathered what energy she could and shaped it into a single, sharp burst. The pulse went out, silent, invisible, but powerful. Her skin patterns flared bright for 1 second, then dimmed again as she cut the signal. She opened her eyes. It is done, Daniel exhaled. Now we wait. But waiting did not mean being still. Daniel worked through the night, reinforcing the shelter, setting traps that would not harm anyone but could slow intruders. He placed motion alarms in the grass, rigged lights to flash and confuse scanners, and prepared escape routes through the hills. Lyrene watched, realizing something important. Humans did not rely on having perfect control. They relied on refusing to lose. In the early hours of morning, the sensors beeped softly. Daniel froze, then moved quickly to the window. Lyrene joined him, her heart pounding. Far in the distance, faint lights moved across the plains, small, precise, not like human vehicles, multiple drones, and behind them something larger. Daniel's voice was low. They found the area. Lyrene's patterns dimmed with fear. They are coming here. Daniel turned to her, eyes steady despite the danger. Then we make sure they regret it, he said. Outside, the lights crept closer through the darkness, silent and relentless like predators that did not need to roar. And inside the small shelter, a human and an alien queen stood side by side, preparing to face what the galaxy thought they could never survive. Night settled heavily over the plains, wrapping the small shelter in shadows that stretched far into the distance. The faint lights moving across the horizon grew brighter with each passing minute. Daniel stood near the window, watching carefully, his posture steady but tense. Lyrene stood beside him, her glowing skin dim and calm on the surface, though inside she felt the quiet pressure of approaching danger. The enemy had found them. Daniel moved first. He checked each device he had prepared earlier, motion sensors, light traps, and small machines that emitted false signals meant to confuse scanners. None of it matched the advanced technology of the Aurelian Empire, yet he trusted his preparations because they came from experience, not perfection. Lyrene watched him with growing respect. Humans were not the strongest species physically or technologically, but they possessed something rare, the ability to adapt quickly when facing impossible odds. They will send drones first, she said softly. They test defenses before committing fully. Daniel nodded. Then we let them test. He switched off several lights inside the shelter, leaving only a faint glow. Outside, the wind moved through the tall grass, masking smaller sounds. The first drone appeared above a ridge, hovering silently like a dark star against the sky. Its scanning beam swept across the land slowly. Lyrene felt a cold weight in her chest. The drone belonged to the coalition that attacked her flagship. They would not stop until they confirmed her death. Daniel activated a small signal emitter placed far from the shelter. The device pulsed with heat and energy, mimicking a power source. The drone reacted immediately, shifting toward the false target. That will buy us time, Daniel whispered. Lyrene studied him. You fight without fear. Daniel shook his head slightly. No, I feel fear. I just don't let it decide for me. The drone reached the emitter and scanned it intensely. After a moment, it released a narrow energy beam, destroying the device in a flash of light. Daniel watched carefully. They shoot first, ask later, he said quietly. More lights appeared behind the drone, 3 more scouts approaching in formation. The enemy was closing the net. Lyrene's breathing grew heavier. They will triangulate our location soon. Daniel turned toward her. Then we change the game. He handed her a small headset. Communication line, if we get separated, stay on this channel. Lyrene accepted it. The gesture felt strangely intimate, trust shared in a simple object. The drones spread across the plains, scanning methodically. One moved closer to the shelter, its beam brushing the ground like searching fingers. Daniel waited until the last possible moment before activating another trap. Bright lights flashed suddenly from multiple directions, creating false heat signatures. The drone hesitated, confused by conflicting data. Lyrene felt surprise again. "Your technology is simple, yet effective." Daniel gave a faint smile. "Simple things break less." The drone turned away, chasing another false signal. For a moment, silence returned. Then the sky itself changed. A larger ship appeared above the clouds, descending slowly. Its shape blocked the stars. Even from a distance, Lyrene recognized its design, a hunter-class vessel built for capture or elimination. Her voice tightened. "They have come personally." Daniel's expression hardened, but he did not retreat. "Then we make sure we're still here when your people arrive." Lyrene closed her eyes briefly. She felt the echo of the signal she had sent earlier. Somewhere in space, her Imperial fleet might already be moving toward her location. She only needed time. The first enemy ground unit arrived moments later. A tall, armored figure stepped from behind the ridge, scanning with a glowing weapon. It moved with precise mechanical grace. Daniel motioned for silence. They stayed hidden while the figure approached the shelter slowly. Lyrene's heart beat faster. She was not fully healed. If combat began now, she would be at a disadvantage. The armored figure paused, tilting its head as if listening. Daniel pressed a button on a remote device. A loud mechanical noise echoed from a distant hill, drawing attention away from the shelter. The enemy turned immediately and moved toward the sound. Lyrene felt awe. "You anticipate their reactions," Daniel whispered. "People or machines follow patterns." Before she could respond, another drone appeared closer than expected, scanning directly toward them. Its beam passed over the shelter walls. Alarms flashed. "They detected something," Lyrene said. Daniel moved quickly. "Time to move." He grabbed a pack and guided her toward a hidden exit at the back of the shelter. They slipped into the darkness just as a beam struck the front wall, sending sparks into the air. They ran through tall grass, heading toward the canyon where they had hidden earlier. Lyrene's strength faltered, but she forced herself forward. Daniel slowed slightly to match her pace, never leaving her behind. Behind them, the shelter erupted in light as drones surrounded it. The enemy believed they were still inside. They reached the canyon entrance and hid among the rocks. Lyrene leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "You should leave me," she said quietly. "Your survival probability increases without me." Daniel looked at her sharply. "Not happening. You do not understand," she insisted. "I am their target. Your life has value beyond this conflict." Daniel's voice softened but stayed firm. "Lyra, I saved you because it was right. That hasn't changed." She fell silent, unable to argue against such simple certainty. The enemy drones realized the shelter was empty moments later. Their scanning beams shifted across the land again. Daniel watched the sky. "How long until your fleet could arrive?" "If they detected my signal," Lyrene said, "perhaps hours." Daniel exhaled slowly. "Then we hold for hours." Time stretched painfully. The drones searched relentlessly, moving closer with each sweep. Daniel guided Lyrene deeper into the canyon, using natural shadows to hide their heat signatures. He placed small devices along the path, ready to create distractions. Suddenly, a beam struck the rock above them, showering dust down. "They see us," Lyrene whispered. Daniel grabbed her hand without thinking and pulled her behind a narrow ledge. Energy blasts struck the canyon walls, sending echoes through the air. Lyrene felt fear rising not for herself, but for him. He moved with courage that bordered on reckless, protecting her without hesitation. An enemy soldier descended into the canyon, weapon raised. Daniel triggered a flash device, blinding the soldier temporarily. He grabbed Lyrene and moved quickly to another position. "They're trying to capture you," Daniel said. "Their shots are controlled." Lyrene nodded. "They need confirmation of my identity." The canyon filled with tension. Every movement felt louder, every breath heavier. Then the sky changed again. A deep vibration rolled through the air, followed by streaks of light descending from orbit. Massive shapes appeared above the clouds, sleek ships with luminous designs. Lyrene's skin patterns brightened instantly. "My fleet," she whispered. Energy beams from the Imperial ship struck the enemy hunter vessel, forcing it to retreat. The drones scattered as new ships arrived, forming a protective perimeter over the canyon. Daniel stared upward, awe filling his eyes. "They came fast," he said. Lyrene felt relief wash through her. She activated her implant again, sending a confirmation signal. Within minutes, a landing craft descended nearby, its doors opening to reveal Aurelian guards. They approached cautiously, scanning the area before lowering their weapons when they saw Lyrene. "Your Majesty," one guard said, kneeling. Lyrene straightened despite her exhaustion. For a moment, she returned to the posture of a queen. Daniel stepped back slightly, giving her space. The guards offered medical assistance, but Lyrene raised a hand. Her gaze moved toward Daniel. "He stays," she said firmly. The guards exchanged glances but nodded. As they prepared to leave the canyon, enemy ships attempted one final attack. Daniel watched as Lyrene stepped forward, her glowing patterns bright and strong now. She issued commands through her communicator, coordinating the Imperial fleet with precise clarity. Inspired by Daniel's earlier tactics, she suggested unexpected maneuvers, fast shifts, deceptive signals, unpredictable angles. The enemy ships faltered, unable to predict the new strategy. Within minutes, the battle ended. The enemy retreated into deep space. Silence returned to the plains. Lyrene turned toward Daniel, her eyes softened. "You saved more than my life," she said quietly. "You reminded me what strength truly means." Daniel smiled faintly. "You did most of the saving yourself." She shook her head gently. "No. You showed me a different way to lead." The guards waited respectfully as she stepped closer to him. "I must return to my empire," she said, "but I will not forget this place, or you." Daniel looked out across the plains. "I figured you'd have responsibilities." "I do," she said softly, "yet choices remain." He met her gaze, understanding without needing more words. The landing craft prepared for departure. Lyrene paused at the entrance, turning back once more. "Humanity has always been seen as unpredictable," she said. "Now I understand why. You fight not because you are ordered to, but because you choose to care." Daniel nodded. "That's kind of our thing." She smiled faintly, a rare, genuine expression. The ship lifted into the sky, leaving the plains quiet again. Days passed. Daniel returned to his routines, repairing the shelter and rebuilding what had been damaged. Life resumed its slow rhythm, but something felt different. The sky seemed larger now, filled with possibilities. One evening, as the sun set, a familiar ship descended quietly near the horizon. Lyrene stepped out alone. She walked toward him without guards or ceremony. "I have made changes," she said. "My empire will form an alliance with humanity, not from politics, from trust." Daniel studied her. "Sounds like a big decision." "It is," she said, "and it began here." She looked around at the plains, then back at him. "I came back," she said softly, "because I chose to." Daniel smiled, warmth spreading through his chest. The wind moved gently across the land as two very different beings stood side by side. No longer just a queen and a human, but partners in a future neither of their worlds had imagined before.